Good day, everyone. I'm Ivan, the moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is Form 941 Compliance Update 2025. Avoid IRS penalties with line-by-line accuracy. I want to introduce our presenter for today, Diana Riem. Diana is currently the Director of Payroll Operations at Anne and Robert Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago. Diana has been heavily involved in the payroll field for over 17 years. She obtained her FPC Fundamental Payroll Certification through the American Payroll Association. Diana has her CPP Certified Payroll Professional through the APA. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you, and welcome to Form 941 2025 update. So first we're going to go over 941 basics, and then we'll do a line-by-line review of the form. So we'll go through the entire form in Schedule B requirements and tips, reconciliation of the Form 941 and W-2s at year end. So the quarterly 941, what is it and why is it so important? Now, from an exceptions perspective, there are some exceptions to where you would not have to complete a 941 form. So do want to make sure that there's clarity around that. All right, let's talk a little bit more about those due dates. So from a due date perspective, so Form 941 due dates, really important piece there to keep in mind and to make sure that you're doing. All right, now, if you want to file electronically, I always like to go over this. So the IRS does have a solution with a e-employment e-file, so an employment e-file program. All right, now some important points. The big key thing here is to remember that the IRS does not have people sitting in their location doing, just entering your 941s when they come in the mail. However, what they do have is they have scanners that they use to manage all of this. The importance of understanding that is because if you don't make sure that you do this appropriately, this is where these important points become so important, because if you don't do this right, then the employer will have penalties and interest from the IRS. All right, penalties. So penalties with the IRS is considered a three-tiered, is supposed to be a three-tiered system. Now, from a reporting penalty perspective, for each whole or part month, a return is not filed. So do be mindful of this. It is very important to make sure that you're consistent here. All right, signing the form. Now, from a signing the form perspective, you do need to be careful of some key things. So some updates from a 2025 perspective. Let's begin the process of the line-by-line form review. So let's start talking about that and what that means. From a line-by-line perspective, line one is the number of employees who have received wages within this particular quarter. Now that is a key element. Line two, wages, tips, and other compensation. Line three is your income tax that was withheld. Line four, this is more of a checkbox. Lines 5A through 5E are really around making sure that you're doing the right thing from a Social Security and Medicare perspective. 5C is your taxable Medicare wages. So you do want to make sure that you include everything from a Medicare wage perspective. All right, line 6 is your total taxes before adjustments. So that's your total. Line 7 is current fractions of cents adjustment. 8 is your current quarter's adjustments for sick pay. Line 9, current quarter's adjustments for tips and group term life insurance. Line 10 is total adjustments. Line 11 is qualified small business payroll tax for increasing research activity. Total taxes after adjustments is your line 12. So that allows you to take your total tax minus all of your adjustments, and that is where you would adjust here. Line 13 is your total deposits for this particular quarter. Line 14 and 15, this is where you're figuring out your balance due and your overpayment. All right, part 2, this is when you're going over your deposit schedule. All right, 17 is if you're closing your business, and this will be the last 941 you do. Part 4, the IRS contact the company's third-party designee. All right, part 5, this is the signing of the form. All right, here is the 2025 form. Something to look at. All right, Schedule B. The purpose of Schedule B is to tell the IRS when you the pay date was. Here is the deposit schedule. So, all right, reconciliation to the W-2, and then there's all kinds of pointers in here on how to reduce discrepancies. Here is a nice chart for you to kind of compare. Now, I don't have the taxes on here because you do have to put a little bit more work into that. All right, so we covered a lot of information in a short period of time. Also, I hope you got a lot of valuable information out of this session. I hope you found it a good use of your time. And I do want to say thank you very much for attending, and I wish you all a really pleasant day ahead.
Thank you, Diana. That concludes the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now and you may all have a great day ahead.